Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of the Radar. I really hope I'm on camera and Justin was done counting down because I can't see anything. But I saw a vague idea of fingers. So welcome to this episode of the Radar, the Halloween special. It is not Halloween, but it is Halloween week. Some other awesome radio show got to do an episode on, we'll get to do an episode on Halloween. It's not mine, but this is my half, if all goes to plan, half if nothing goes to plan, will be my last show at Riot Radio for the Halloween season ever. So I wanted to go all out. Last year I wore a Wayne's World hat and called it a day. This time, a little bit more than that. I have painted my nails. I am wearing a ring. I bought a $25 cross and a $20 wig. And I've had these glasses for forever. So here I am. If it's not obvious to you, I am Dave Mustaine. No, I am Ozzy Osbourne. I always thought it'd be a great idea to do a tribute to Ozzy, considering his passing earlier this year. And my dad even suggested at the time just halting the Beach Boys thing I was doing for the entire summer when he died, when I thought, wow, that's an insane idea to just stop in the middle of it. So, but I knew I was going to do this. I knew I wanted to do something because I love Ozzy. I love the music he made on his own, or I guess with Randy and his multiple guitarists as the group Ozzy Osbourne, and also with Black Sabbath, particularly with Black Sabbath. I've always loved Black Sabbath. So I thought, what is a better idea than to do an episode dedicated to the Prince of Darkness by dressing up like the Prince of Darkness and reviewing and ranking the albums he did with his band Black Sabbath. Now, I'm going to rank all of the Black Sabbath albums that they did with Ozzy Osbourne, except for 13. If you know, you know. 13 is the final studio album from the band Black Sabbath, released in 2013. Ozzy is on it. I'm not counting it because that is from 2013, and the albums I'm ranking today are the ones from 1970 to 1978, until Ozzy was fired and replaced with some guy named Ronnie James Dio, who I totally didn't do an entire episode on earlier last year, so definitely don't check that out. You can't tell, but I'm winking, I think. Under all of this, I might be winking. I could just be experiencing some sort of atrophy. I don't know. The wig is ridiculous, I realize. I don't know if it's Ozzy looking. I look more like Geddy Lee, I think. But anyway, again, with the not being able to see thing, I might have to do this a bit. But also, I don't have that many notes. This isn't a very note-heavy episode. So yeah, why don't we begin? So I'm ranking 8 albums, like I said, from 1970 to 78, from the album Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath to the album Never Say Die. Speaking of Never Say Die, I know it's kind of cliche to say that the album that was last released by the group, or that the later stuff by a group sucks or isn't as good as their earlier stuff. Well, that kind of applies here. So without further ado, why don't we get into number 8, the 8th. This segment, we'll be talking about the 8th and 7th greatest Black Sabbath album with Ozzy, not counting 13. And then we'll go to play some music from the albums after that. And then I'll tell you about number 6, 5, and 4. And then final music break. And then 3, 2, 1. And there's a few here that are controversial, to say the least. Mr. Dan of Riot Radio himself. This might be my last episode ever, considering how apparently unhappy he is with my ranking. But the show must go on. This could be my last segment. He's pacing right now, I think. That's terrifying. Anyway, number 8 is Never Say Die. I have this ranked last. I can only assume that's a good idea based on the faces of everyone in the studio that I cannot see. Never Say Die is the last album released by Black Sabbath in the 70s until Ozzy was fired. Never Say Die is also probably not one you've heard of, because it didn't perform very well and people didn't really like it at the time. Like, you read up how the contemporary reviews, people don't love it. A lot of comments on the subreddit for Black Sabbath are like, am I the odd one out for liking this album? Yes, generally this album is pretty disliked. Now, mind you, sorry, my hair's in my face. I don't dislike any albums on this list. That's the thing. I don't know if I really dislike many albums, period. You know, I think if you've seen the show, you know me, you know my gist. I'm not really this album sucks and you're bad for liking it type of guy. I'm not really into that. That's not really how my brain chemistry works. I'm more of a this album didn't work for me kind of guy, but I can see how this is someone's favorite. I did browse the Black Sabbath subreddit to see what people say, and this album does have some defenders. However, not one person said it's their favorite. This is no one's favorite Black Sabbath album. I asked everyone, and it's no one's favorite. So yeah, Never Say Die. Very brief interlude here. I considered asking, and I won't be able to see them throw a thumbs up or anything. I was considering asking the guys at Riot Radio to be able to throw up album covers as graphics at like the top right of me while I'm still on screen. Is that a thing we could possibly do at some, not this episode, but okay, you guys can do that. Okay, great. It's good to know for future episodes. Cool to know that I can throw up album covers months after ranking 29 albums from a discography, but you know, I digress. Never Say Die is their 8th album, and it's not great. It's not bad. It's not horrid. If I had to describe this album in one word, it would be boring, which is kind of really discriminatory when you're the first heavy metal group, if you don't know that. Also, I do want to give out to mention, this episode, while dedicated to Ozzy Osbourne, it wasn't just Ozzy that made the band what it was. That includes Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, and Tony Iommi, the other 3 important pieces to Sabbath, at the time at least. Now, mind you, while all their strengths are strong, and I can't wait to talk about the albums I really, really do love, Never Say Die is just kind of boring. It's just... you could tell the band is kind of at their wit's end. It's kind of over. You know, you can kind of tell that's gone on for a little too long with the group that they were in and the amount of drugs they were taking, and no one was really happy. This was a obligation of an album, as it were. Some important things about Never Say Die. The album cover was made by Hypnosis, the same people who did the album cover for Dark Side of the Moon. If you look up the album cover, you know what? I'll just flip my laptop. You can kind of see it here. The 2 dudes with the 2 pilots there, you can kind of see. Made by Hypnosis, aka Storm Thorgerson. The album cover people who also did Dark Side of the Moon, which were here. A bunch of ELO albums, Paul McCartney albums, a whole bunch of different albums. They're great. They also did the album cover for the album that's next after this, I'll tell you about in a second. But they also pitched a different album cover for this of a bunch of people, like a bunch of doctors and surgeons. That album cover would end up being used on an album for Rainbow, which originally had Ronnie James Dio as its lead singer, kind of full circle. But Never Say Die, I'd love to highlight some tracks because I do have a list on my phone of like tracks I want to highlight from each album. And to be honest with you, there's not much from this one. There's like Never Say Die, the title track is all right. And so is Junior's Eyes. And that's it. Like this whole album comes in, I think I just swallowed some wig. This album comes in at 45 minutes and 38 seconds, which is not that long for an album, but for a Sabbath album, you'll learn that is a little too much, especially for one this late into the game. This is 1978. It's kind of over for them. They're all already indulging in drugs, but Ozzy would end up being fired for taking too many drugs and being pretty unresponsive. Can you imagine being fired from Black Sabbath in 1978 for doing too many drugs? That's how many drugs Ozzy Osbourne was on. That's absurd. But Never Say Die just kind of feels like a modge podge of obligation from each of the group members. Some of they would write lyrics and then record in the evening in one day, and it just feels kind of lazy, you know? Not to say like, wow, I'm so disappointed with where they were in their careers. No, I mean, this was kind of inevitable. It just happens that Never Say Die happens to be the album that came out that year from the group Black Sabbath. Interestingly, the song Swinging the Chain, which closes out the album, is the only song I believe up to this point in the entire Black Sabbath discography not sang by Ozzy. It's sang by Bill Ward. And that's just another example of them kind of phoning it in. The second last track, Breakout, has no lyrics because Ozzy didn't want to sing them. That's literally it. Ozzy originally left the band before Never Say Die, and they replaced him, and then Ozzy came back and threw out all the lyrics they wrote with that guy. So it's just, this album has a lot of vitriol and a lot of just bad about it. It's not that the album is bad. It's fine. It's not, I didn't listen to it and go, God, this is just not good. It's just not really quintessential Sabbath. You know, when you think of Black Sabbath, you think of the first heavy metal group of all time, and that's just not on here. I realize I was saving this whole spot for this album. I'm kind of being slow here. Now, let's move on to number 7 here, is the album right before this one, which is Technical Ecstasy. This album is praised a little bit more than I already forgot, Never Say Die. This is the album cover for that. Hypnosis also did that one. It looks like 2 robots on 2 escalators lasering each other. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be. This album, a lot of the same beats and patterns as Never Say Die. This album was a bit phoned in. You Won't Change Me and Dirty Women are the standout tracks. They're okay. After this album came out, they went and toured with Van Halen, this new up-and-coming rock group, and Van Halen opened for them, and everyone was kind of impressed by how high energetic and how great and awesome Van Halen was compared to Black Sabbath's low-energy performances. So Technical Ecstasy could be seen as the beginning of the end, and when they started running out of steam. And again, other than that, I honestly don't even have much to say regarding this album, because this album and Never Say Die kind of feel like sister albums in a way because of the direction the band went with them. You know, there's some experimental, like almost jazzy parts, but who wants jazzy parts in your Sabbath album? You know, at least in 1978. I don't mind experimentation. Some of the albums I'll talk about later have great examples of some great, awesome experimentation. They experimented and they created metal. But these two albums didn't really do much for me and for a lot of other people. So that's why it's at number 7. Mostly because You Won't Change Me and Dirty Women actually stood out to me. No songs on Never Say Die really stood out to me that much. It seems like I'm only doing 2 standout tracks for each album. No, those are the last 2 that will only have 2. Every other one from now on will have 3, because there's at least 3 good songs on each of them. Coming up after the music break, I'll be talking about my picks for the 6th, 5th, and 4th greatest Black Sabbath albums, with Ozzy Osbourne not including 13. These are this is where we get into the good territory. I'm done complaining. Please don't forget that you can follow us on social media at the DCSA Media Hub. You can follow me on Instagram at AlexRAE, that's RAE. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at the Radar Life, also RAE. In the meantime, here is the title track for one of the next couple albums, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath by Black Sabbath, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 47 of The Radar, the episode where I'm ranking every single Black Sabbath album that they did with Ozzy Osbourne, asterisk, not including 13. So, that I realize if you don't know or if you're just tuning in, that sounds like I'm not reviewing 13 of the albums Ozzy sang on. No, I'm not reviewing the album called 13 because that came out in 2013, and I'm just talking about the first 8. So, speaking of the first 8, I already reviewed my number 8th and number 7th position, which is Never Say Die and Technical Ecstasy, 2 albums you probably haven't even heard of. That's how remarkable they are. Next is an album you probably heard of that is going to get me a lot of flack and is definitely my most controversial opinion maybe I've ever shared on this show. On the Radar, maybe. I did say that Grace by Jeff Buckley didn't really work for me on the last one, on Album Roulette. That was pretty controversial. Here's the thing. My number 6th position, I'm not going to beat around the bush, is Master of Reality. Which, okay, calm down. No one in the studio except Dan listens to Sabbath. I don't think either of them really care. I can't tell. But like anyone watching probably doesn't even know. Actually, never mind. My dad might be watching. Master of Reality is number 6, in my opinion, which is insane because that is like the album. You probably recognize Master of Reality. In fact, I'll throw up the album cover for you. Throw up, literally. There it is. The cover. I say throw up literally as in literally throw my hands up, not as in this album's so bad I want to puke. This is a good album. Let me preface that. It's a good album and I like the album. But everyone seems to be all up in arms about how great it is. Wow, I said that with such vitriol. I don't know why vitriol is the word of the day for me. But I just don't love it as much as other people do. This album is their third album, and it came out in 1971. And I don't really love it. Like, you probably know Children of the Grave, we played you, the opener. That's maybe my favorite song on the album. I think Children of the Grave is spectacular. Into the Void is good too. Orchid is not really that good. After Forever's okay. And Sweet Leaf, excuse me. There's never been a song that I have more complicated feelings with from Black Sabbath than Sweet Leaf. Wow, I'm getting hair on the microphone. I'm going to make sure to collect all that. Sweet Leaf I struggle with to enjoy, but also struggle with to dislike. I don't know. It feels a bit directionless. It is probably the precursor, if not the entire genesis of stoner rock or stoner metal. The hazy guitars and the sort of directionless riffs are derogatory terms to describe the song. It's a good song, I think. I don't know if I like the coughing in the beginning. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I probably sound insane to you. But the song Sweet Leaf, the first track on this album, starts with Tony Iommi taking a hit of I assume a joint, and then going, and then they mix it, and that leads into a guitar. I could see a universe where I go, isn't that cool? How creative. And I kind of, yeah, but like, I don't know. I'm missing the gene that makes you enjoy this album. I respect it a lot, but I don't love it. I don't love this album very much like I do the other albums on this list. I respect it and I get why people like it, but it's just not for me. I'm missing the bug that makes you really, really enjoy that album. So that's why Master of Reality is number 6. That's maybe my most controversial pick because there are still 5 albums left and Master of Reality is not in my top 5 Sabbath albums, at least with Ozzy. Next on my list here, let me open up Spotify here. How am I doing for time? I'm doing pretty good. My number 5 pick is an album that I just love the name of, and we already played you the title track of. It's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is my 5th favorite Ozzy Sabbath album, and for good reason. I think Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was this interesting, started the stretch of albums, and by stretch I mean literally 2 albums, where they kind of felt like they kind of got into a rhythm. The reason I say stretch because you have their first 3 albums that ends with Master of Reality, which I don't love, and then they get back into the swing of things with this. This is actually their 5th album, so technically there's one between, but Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is really good. It's got a spooky album cover. I'll show you that one. I'm a big fan of wordplay, and this album has it in spades. How are you going to be the first heavy metal group named Black Sabbath and you're going to name a song Sabracadabra? Like, that's so fun. That's so quirky. They started doing a lot, even more drugs than they were before. Like, if the album 2 albums ago was smoking joints, now they're pretty much doing anything you could probably name because now they're getting world famous. So now they have access to it. I'm not saying that made the music better, but they are making better music than they were before. And it's a bit hazy, it's a bit crazy, but like Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the title track, A National Acrobat, Sabracadabra, and Killing Yourself to Live. Killing Yourself to Live is bizarrely good. It is ridiculously good. The entire album almost feels a bit like it's a bit angrier in a way, but it's also a bit more of a party. If the other album was weed, this album is cocaine, if that makes sense. It's getting a little bit more into heavier stuff. And the album is heavy because of that. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is pretty heavy. And when I told my dad, because I re-listened to all these albums just this week, but I had heard all of them before. When I told my dad previously that I hadn't heard this album before, he said, "Are you kidding? That's like one of the albums." So, and I can see why. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is a really strong album. It's definitely quintessential. If I had a Sabbath album collection where at the moment I only have 2, I would have brought them, but I work after this, keeping this on for that. I would definitely have to have Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. In case you're wondering, I only have Paranoid and I have Black Sabbath on vinyl. But Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, I wouldn't be opposed to if I got that for like Christmas or something. It's a strong album. It's the first album on this list I can honestly say is really good. I'm very pleased with it. I did make an effort to try and number them by out of 10, but I just stopped. I gave up after Technical Ecstasy. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, I gave an 8 out of 10, which I think is the first one here. In Master Reality, I gave that 7 out of 10. See, I don't hate it. It's just not the best thing in the world. Excuse me. I think what I was going to do also is there are descriptions on Apple Music for each of these albums. I do want to read those as well, just to give you a bit more of the piece of the pie. In fact, if you go to Black Sabbath on Apple Music, Essential Albums, this is the first one they list. So let me read you the description of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath that they provide. Oh my God, it's long. Maybe there's something about working in a haunted castle that brings out the best in musicians. Written in the dungeon at Clearwell Castle in the Forest of Dean, Gloucestershire, England, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is arguably Black Sabbath's masterwork. Sure, the band members were occasionally spooked by the female ghosts that reportedly occupied the premises, but that's a small price to pay for greatness. Released in the fall of 1973, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was, at the time, the band's most musically intricate and lyrically advanced album, the sound of 4 musicians maturing as musicians and writers, even while drowning in the booze and cocaine that would prove their undoing. Living just for dying, dying just for you. Bassist Geezer Butler writes in the most immortal title track and album's sole single. It's an acknowledgement of the band's self-destructive lifestyle, brought on by the pressure of fame, success, and let's face it, the band's own choices. There's more than that, but I don't feel like reading all of it because there's 3 more paragraphs. But they just highlights particular tracks. It's really good. The album's really strong, and I recommend checking it out. The 4th album I have here, oh, my laptop's dying. That's not great. The 4th, at number 4, my 4th favorite Sabbath album is one that surprised me a lot when I first listened to it. And it's the one that is sandwiched between Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Technical Ecstasy. And that's Sabotage. Sabotage is another one you may not have heard of, but it's seriously a really, really strong album. Let me pull up the album cover here. It's not the greatest album cover. In fact, this was supposed to be a work of concept that they ended up using. They're all wearing kind of ridiculous outfits in front of a mirror, but they're reflecting themselves in a weird way. Sabotage is ridiculously strong. Sabotage, for how late in the career it is in Sabbath, I was about to check when it came out, but it doesn't say on in Spotify because it's dumb. Let me see when it says on, I think it'd be 1976 or something, wouldn't it? But no, Sabotage just surprised me a lot when I played it, and I do want to get into why. Sabotage came out in 1975, and it comes in at 42 minutes long, and it does a lot of really good. So like I said, this is probably chronologically until the Dio years, the last really great Sabbath album, in my opinion. Sabotage is superb. If I had to describe to you how good Sabotage is, I would only need to recommend you one song, and that is the song Hole in the Sky. I have been wanting to talk about Hole in the Sky ever since I heard it. Anyone who would listen. Hole in the Sky, not my favorite Sabbath song, but it's really close. It is at least top 5 and maybe top 3 songs. Hole in the Sky is the album opener, and again, this, here's the bingo card because I said it 5 times. Absolute vitriol on this track. The rage, the anger, and the frustration on this album. I'll give you some context. In the late 1970s, because I already forgot when this album came out, the band was kind of being abused, I guess is a strong word, but taken advantage of by their manager. And realizing that they were owed a lot more money than they were getting because of the manager that they had. And so that they felt like they were being sabotaged. So for the first time in their career, Sabotage was angry. It was an angry album. It's the angry Black Sabbath album. And you hear, honestly, in my opinion, some of the greatest vocals from Ozzy Osbourne ever. Hole in the Sky is so out there, and Ozzy hits notes I've never heard him hit and have not heard him hit since. Hole in the Sky obviously is just one song on this 8-song album, but it is ridiculously strong. The guitar, the do 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 do. We'll be playing it for you, obviously, but it's I can't even put into words how good Hole in the Sky is. Other highlighted tracks are Symptom of the Universe and Megalomania. Megalomania is often highlighted as the first what's it called? The first speed metal track, or there's a certain genre that Metallica is that it's not coming to mind right now. But that kind of music, it's really fast, it's really angry, it's really strong. And anger is a really strong emotion when it comes to writing music, and it's all over the place. This feels like such a great album. The first side is a lot of people, I read one review that described this album as like the first half might be the greatest half of a Sabbath album, and the second half is the beginning of the end, which is a great way of putting it, because the first side, like I said, Hole in the Sky, Don't Start Too Late, Symptom of the Universe, Megalomania are really, really strong. But then Think of It All, The Thrill of It All, Superstar, Am I Going Insane Radio, and The Writ aren't bad, but they're very Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. So the first half of this album is really what I recommend. Maybe the best, one of the best sides, not the best side. We'll get there on a Sabbath album. My only note for Hole in the Sky in particular is that it ends really abruptly. It literally doesn't have an ending. It just stops, and then the next song plays. So that you might be taken by surprise by that one, Hole in the Sky. But it is seriously mind-blowing how good that song is. I can't recommend it enough. I think I'm swallowing a bunch of hair because I keep swallowing, and I'm swallowing something. I'm gonna have a hairball. But it's really strong. Check out Sabotage is remarkable. I've seen people rank it as their favorite Sabbath album, and that's not totally crazy. I think there are 3 better ones, but honestly, with this one, with number 4 and number 3, it was pretty close. I wasn't really sure. Now, I do want to get into number 3, number 2, number 1 after the music break, where I will be talking about my top 3 Sabbath Ozzy albums. Please don't forget that you can follow us on social media at the DCSA Media Hub. You can follow me on Instagram at AlexRAE, that's R-A-E. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at the RAEDAR Live, also R-A-E. In the meantime, here is one of the greatest Ozzy Black Sabbath songs, one of the greatest songs of all time, in my opinion. Here is Hole in the Sky by Black Sabbath from their album Sabotage, followed up by Supernaut from another album of theirs, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 47 of the Radar, the episode where I'm reviewing every Ozzy Black Sabbath album. Good news, folks, we have the graphics. This is something we can do. We have the technology. Can we throw the album graphic up now? That is so great. Can we keep that up there for like the whole segment? Not the whole segment, but like the whole part where I'm talking about this album? I assume someone nodded. I hope so. I could be alone for all I know. I just see like black blobs. Anyway, you can't accuse Black Sabbath of false advertising. The group members wanted to call their fourth album Snowblind after their cocaine-inspired song of the same name, only to be turned down by their record company. But really, all of Volume 4 was inspired by cocaine. The bandmates were up to their eyeballs in the stuff at the Bel Air mansion where they wrote most of the songs. They had speaker cabinets full of coke delivered to the recording studio, and guitarist Tony Iommi wrote the neoclassical interlude Laguna Sunrise after staying up all night on you-know-what. Sabbath even thanked the great Coca-Cola Company of Los Angeles in the credits. So, this is so great. I can point. This is so cute. Why haven't I done this like 100 years ago? Volume 4, Black Sabbath, my third favorite Black Sabbath album. Ironic because of the name. This is the one we're talking about. This is so much better. Oh my God. So yeah, Volume 4 is fantastic. Volume 4 is stellar. Volume 4, in one word, cocaine. Sure, I'm not going to tell you that this album is good because of the cocaine, but the album, they happen to be doing cocaine when they were making a good album. That's what I'll say. This album is incredible. Volume 4 and Sabotage are a little bit neck and neck, a little bit, but Volume 4 inches it out for me a little bit because there are more songs on here back to back that make me go, holy crap, this is a killer album. You know, Sabotage, like I said, had one really, really good side. I think side 1 is better than anything on this album. The side 1 of Sabotage is better than anything on Volume 4, but Volume 4 is the better album. Volume 4 has Wheels of Confusion, Tomorrow's Dream, Changes, Supernaut, Snowblind, Cornucopia. These are all really, really strong songs. Particularly the ballad Changes. You probably know Changes. Here's a crazy pull. You might know Changes as the opening of Big Mouth, in which it's covered by Charles Barkley Jr., I believe. That's a really, really, really good song. That is such a good song. Who would have thought of putting a ballad on a metal album? They did, apparently. And it's great. This album is fantastic. Snowblind is stellar. Supernaut, it just feels like what they were doing was what the album was about, you know? This kind of feels like Cocaine the album. And this may come as a shock to you. I've never done Cocaine, but if I did and it had a sound, this is probably it. This album is all over the place. It's a party album. It's strong. It's in your face, and it's not ashamed of what it is. It is, for a boring album name like Volume 4, it is incredible. This album, not that one, this album, wow, this album right here, I cannot recommend enough. Volume 4 is strong in every sense of the word. The only dull, bad apple of the group is FX. FX is track number 4. FX is literally just sound effects. It's only like a minute long, though, so it's not that bad because it's only a minute. But don't be surprised when you get there. Good albums can have weird moments. Look at Dark Side of the Moon. Now that brings us to our top 2 that are on another echelon entirely. I think the top 2 Black Sabbath albums, if we could fade out that graphic, and I'll ask you to throw up the next one in a minute. Awesome. Someone's listening. Thank you, whoever's teching. I literally cannot tell. Someone new might have came in the room and I don't know. I think they may have. But number 2 is their first album. This was very close between 2 and 1. I almost consider putting this one as number 1. Let me read the description, then I'll have you throw up the graphic. When he was 17 years old, a young guitarist born Frank Anthony Iommi sliced the tips off his 2 fingers while working at a sheet metal factory in Birmingham. The story goes that he was so determined to keep playing guitar, he fashioned prosthetic tips out of melted plastic bottles and detuned his guitar by a minor third because the looser strings were easier to play. 3 years later, that ominous detuned tone would form the backbone of Black Sabbath sound, and it happened almost entirely by accident. And that especially is true on their first album, Black Sabbath, which is at number 2 on my list. If we could throw up look at that awesome album cover. I'm sure it's there. I really can't tell. I should go to the doctor. This album is incredible. This is one of, if not the greatest debut albums of all time. I did do an episode on debut albums, and I'm fairly certain this was on it. So I won't yap too much about it, but it is really, really strong. At only 39 minutes and 5 songs, it is really, really good. For an album that came out in 1970, the Beatles broke up that year. This is still coming off of the hippie movement. The group Black Sabbath, formerly called Earth, aka the Turkish polka band, I think was their first name, really wanted to hone in on what Bob Dylan used to be talking about, which is, atomic war, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, how war is bad, Vietnam is scary, that type of thing. And no one was making music about that anymore because everyone was all peace and love. While these guys grew up in squalor and covered and filled with dirt and were just bad kids in school. How's it go? And people in the hallway. These guys wanted to make an album that was angry, an album that was scary, an album that was almost like the music equivalent to a horror movie, because that's the life they were living. They weren't living peace and love. Don't forget to wear your skirt to San Francisco, whatever that song is called. This album is spooky. It's arguably the first heavy metal album ever. There's an argument to be made. It's not completely sealed in stone, but I did read a quote that stands with me, and I actually put on my story when Ozzy died, which is, you can argue that that heavy metal was invented before Black Sabbath's Black Sabbath, but you can't argue that it was invented after. This album is quintessentially metal, and it opens up with what, again, could be the first heavy metal song on a heavy metal album, Black Sabbath, the title track, which is is just incredible. I think Rolling Stone ranked it as the greatest metal song of all time. If not, it was Master of Puppets. But Black Sabbath opens with the words, "What is this that stands before me? Turn around quick and start to run. Find out I'm the chosen one." And then Ozzy goes, "Oh no." And this boom, 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 like this evil, dark tone, this idea of sleep paralysis, this dark creature at the end of your bed. This was truly evil sounding music that hadn't been done before, not in the mainstream. And people loved it. I mean, people hated it, but people love it. And it's so, so good. Now, Black Sabbath's title track isn't the only good thing. You also have The Wizard. I'm not totally in love with The Wizard. Matt, who I had on last episode, really loves it. There's harmonica in this metal album, which is great. But then you get the track like Wicked World and NIB. Oh my God, this album is all over the place. For a first album, they knew who they were right away and the sound they wanted to make. And it is endlessly impressive. And I cannot recommend checking out this album enough. The album cover is spooky. Look at that. Look how creepy that is. I love it. This album came out the same year as Let It Be. What other albums came out in 1970? All Things Must Pass. Apparently, I can only name Beatles albums that came out in 70. But at this point, I need you to know, it was mostly peace and love. So for them to drop this, Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, starring tracks as The Wizard and Behind the Wall of Sleep and A Bit of Finger, get out of here. Minds must have been blown, and they must have been, because this is what kickstarted the entire metal genre. And I recommend it to anyone wanting to get into metal, or anyone who hasn't even who loves metal and has never listened, or if you have listened to it, revisit it. It is a crazy, crazy good album, especially that title track. What an opener. Now, that would be someone's best album if they were any other group. That is an all-timer album. That is in the Rolling Stones list of the 500 greatest albums of all time for good reason. But it is not the greatest Sabbath album. That is the album that is left, that you probably know it. You've probably seen it. You could hum some songs from it. Let me read you the beginning of the description. Thank you for taking down the graphic. If any album signaled the definitive end of the 60s, it was this one. Gone were the flower children, peace chants, and day-glow paint. In came monumental, vicious guitar riffs, Ozzy Osbourne's snarling twist of a voice, and stories of doom, drug addiction, and death. It wasn't always this way, of course. Confirmed Beatles fans, Sabbath members had their psychedelic period, but by the late 60s, the death toll in Vietnam was rising. The band's native Birmingham remained studded with World War II bomb sites, and these blue-collar boys saw only mind-dulling factory work ahead of them. I'm not going to... All right, you know what? Of all that despair came this furious, uncompromising record. Despite critics' misreading of the album as a satanic screed, the album is fact containing searing indictments of the elite. War Pigs, meant at one point to be the album's title track, opens with air raid sirens and ultimately envisions the evisceration of warmongering politicians. It is really, really... There's more to that, but I don't want to spoil the songs. Paranoid by Black Sabbath is my #1 album. My favorite Black Sabbath album, period. Not just Ozzy. Maybe my favorite metal album of all time. It's Paranoid by Black Sabbath. It is the album of all time. Arguably, maybe one of the top 10 greatest albums of all time. I wouldn't besmirch you if you said that. I don't know if I'd say it, but if you weren't into music and you said, give me 10 albums, I would give you Paranoid. Paranoid, listen to this first side, okay? Even if you're not a Sabbath fan, even if you're not a metal fan, we've got War Pigs, Paranoid, Planet Caravan, and Iron Man, all on the same side. Are you kidding me? Iron Man? Can you imagine being the guy that came up with wow, right? Like some of the most iconic songs, not just of metal history, but music history in general, are on this album. This is when they finally got a budget and they succeeded. The title track, I think, is one of the greatest songs of all time, Paranoid, at just 2.5 minutes long. The song Paranoid was written last minute as a single, and it did so well that they changed the name of the album into it. Paranoid, the song, is ridiculously good. That first do 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 do. I mean, it's just incredible. How do you listen to this album and not fall in love? To have such chutzpah to open an album by rhyming masses with masses and for it still to be off the wall is incredible. War Pigs is great, of course. You know War Pigs. Paranoid is amazing. Planet Caravan's a bit slower, a bit more spooky sounding, but I love it. Iron Man, of course. Also, if you didn't know, Iron Man, the song, has nothing to do with the superhero. Iron Man is about a guy predicting or getting a vision of a person destroying the entire world. So he tells everyone, hey, someone's going to come and destroy the entire world, and no one listens. So out of anger, because no one's listening to him, he destroys the whole world. And the vision was about him. How interesting. But of course, the big songs aren't just the good ones. You also have Electric Funeral and Hand of Doom, both incredible, incredible songs. These songs surprised me so much. Electric Funeral and Hand of Doom are ridiculously good. Electric Funeral especially. Ozzy's voice on this entire album is incredible. It's powerful. It's commanding. It's hissing. Is Ozzy the greatest vocalist of all time? Not really. Is he maybe the greatest singer of all time? No, but he is an incredible frontman, and his vocals carry this album. Obviously, the drumming, the bass, and of course, Tony Iommi's insanely iconic guitar riffs carry this album a lot, but they wouldn't be Paranoid if it weren't for Ozzy's vocals. Ozzy is incredible. Ozzy sounds hostile, and he means every word he says. And for this album, not only to be metal, but also to be smart and intelligent about its lyrics. For War Pigs to talk about Vietnam propaganda and how the elite are controlling all of us. It's a class war. What an interesting concept for a metal album. Things that are now quintessentially metal aesthetic were forged in the makings of this album. The spooky, evil, catchy riffs on this album are what metal is made of, which is metal. And I can't believe how good this album is. Check out Paranoid if you haven't. This wasn't going to be number one from the start. I don't know how I ever doubted it. It's Paranoid. It's great, and I love it. That's basically the end of our show today. I do want to give a special shout out to Ozzy Osbourne, of course, without whom we probably wouldn't have any of these albums. If you do like these, check out, by the way, the Dio albums. Those are really good too. Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules are both great. Also, how much time do I have? I have like 2 minutes, I think-ish. Check out Blizzard of Oz, Ozzy's solo album. That's all killer, no filler. If that was on this list, it'd be number 2. That's a really great album. That's the end of our show today. I look forward to seeing you back here next week. I anticipate having a guest on. Maybe he's watching right now. Thank you so much for watching. I checked during the music break and I had 7 concurrent viewers, so thank you for watching. Please don't forget that you can follow us on social media at the DCSA Media Hub. Don't forget that you can follow me on Instagram at AlexRAE, that's R-A-E. You can follow this show on Instagram and Twitter at The Radar Live, also R-A-E. In the meantime, have a happy Halloween. Here is... Come on, it's incredible. Here's Paranoid from Paranoid by Black Sabbath, playing us out live for the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.